they had a French Revolution. A lot of people thought it was kind of the same thing, a rising up of the people and a spirit of freedom and liberty and so on. And yet the result there in France was totally different than the result here in America for some reasons that he...
A lot of the guillotine.
Yes, it turned out to be a bloody mess. The philosophers of the 18th century explained in a very simple manner the gradual decay of religious faith. Religious zeal, they said, this is what the philosophers of the 18th century, not America. Religious zeal, they said, must necessarily fail the more generally liberty is established and knowledge diffused. Unfortunately, the facts, he says, by no means accord with their theory. There are certain populations in Europe whose unbelief is only equaled by their ignorance and debasement. He was a comedian. While in America, I don't think he was laughing. While in America, one of the freest and most enlightened nations in the world, the people fulfill with fervor all the outward duties of religion. So they're succeeding and they're religious. De Tocqueville pointed out that in France, he says, I had always seen the spirit of religion and the spirit of freedom marching in opposite directions. But in America, I found that they were intimately united. Towards the end of that, from the beginning, politics and religion contracted an alliance which has never been dissolved. Well, we certainly have some political leaders that are dissolving it now.
That's right.
Yes?
No, I'm sorry.
However, he emphasized the fact that the religious undergirding of the political structure was a common denominator of moral teachings in different denominations and not the political pressure of some national church hierarchy. Not the political pressure of some natural church hierarchy. There was no establishment of religion, as there was in France, as there was in all over Europe at the time. Role of religion in schools, role of the American clergy. Over on page 83, he's talking about the American clergy, and this is some of the most famous things that get quoted. He said the American clergy fills no public appointments. They're not even represented in the legislative assemblies. He says how different this was from Europe, where the clergy nearly always belonged to a national church and occupied seats of power, political seats of power, because the church was very intertwined with government there. How different this was. I'm sorry, I just read that, where they were. He says in America, the clergy remained politically separated from the government, but nevertheless provided a moral stability among the people. In other words, there was separation of church and state, he calls it, but not separation of state and religion. And when we're saying state, in this case, he's just using state to mean government, right? And especially national government. We're going to need to distinguish here between the overall national government, which we sometimes call the state, versus state governments, because that's a key distinction when we're talking about freedom of religion here in America. All right, on page 84. The Americans combined the notions of Christianity and of liberty so intimately in their minds that it's impossible to make them conceive the one without the other. And then he's talking about their duty to keep a message of religious principles and moral values flowing out to the people, the clergy doing this. And so we're going to emphasize here the religious undergirdings of American government, where he said, I sought for the greatness and genius of America in her commodious harbors and her ample rivers, and it was not there. In her fertile fields and boundless prairies, it was not there. In her rich mines and her vast world commerce, and it was not there. Not until I went to the churches of America and heard her pulpits aflame with righteousness did I understand the secret of her genius and power. America is great because she is good. And if America ever ceases to be good, America will cease to be great. It is our political doctrine in America that we're trying to follow God. Now, we may not agree on who God is, but we're trying to follow God. We believe in the laws of nature and of nature's God that Cicero talked about 2,000 years ago. We just got to identify those correct principles and implement them in our secular society here. And if we do so, then we believed, and we have been proven right, that we would be more prosperous and we would be more free. So he said the American founders did something that no other nation has ever successfully achieved, the task of providing legal equality of all religions. So America, that's what our religious liberty to us is just legal equality of all religions, both Christian and non-Christian. Okay, now Jefferson sought to disestablish the official church in England. When I was a kid, I said to my mom, what's the biggest word in the English language? And I was going to say they didn't have supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, but she said was anti-disestablishmentarianism. I said, well, and so I had to learn how to spell anti-disses. And so anti-disestablishment, I had no idea what it meant. I didn't have any idea what it meant at all until I read about this. And establishmentarianism, so let's just break that down. It'll be a good basis for what we're talking about several times here. We're against establishmentarianism. Establishmentarianism means the establishment of a church religion. Establishmentarianism. This is just what they did in England and in most of the nations of the world. You establish a state religion. Disestablishmentarianism, which is what Jefferson and the founding fathers were, we did not want to establish. We wanted to get away. We wanted to disestablish any religious control of government. Disestablishmentarianism, and this word that my mom taught me, of course, was anti-disestablishmentarianism, which is what the establishmentarianists want. You know, it's what the powers that be in the world want. They're anti-disestablishmentarianism because they want to control. They want to use religion to control the masses and so on. Anti-disestablishment. But in America, we are disestablishmentarianism. That's what the Establishment Clause is, that there shall be no establishment of a state religion, right? Anti-disestablishmentarianism. Patrick Henry, we got a whole bunch of imperfect people. We're all imperfect, and we can get, and Patrick Henry, who's one of my favorite characters of all, got carried away with this because he was so enthusiastic about strengthening the spectrum of Christian churches that he introduced a bill which did not pass, I don't think. It says establishing a provision for teachers of the Christian religion. So suppose this had passed, and in America we would have the Christian religion would be the state church, right? Immediately Madison reacted with his famous memorial and remonstrance against religious assessments. In other words, this thing said, we'll support it by some of our taxes will go to support the Christian churches and so on. And this is what Madison said. He said that state government should not prefer one religion over the other. Equality of religions was the desired goal, not to prefer the Christian religion over any other religion, as far as our government was concerned, because it would take away our freedom of conscience. It would take away our freedom of thought, our right to think and feel and act. It would take away our agency, our freedom, the most basic thing that God has given us here and made us, which makes us the sovereigns. No.
But one of the first things they did was just buy a bunch of Bibles to distribute to the public schools.
Oh, that was done. There were, and you know, the McGuffey's readers and so on. You need to go through there, and every other quote's from the Bible. It's true, and a lot of them were talking about Christ himself too. But there was no establishment of religion as far as the national government. But there was as far as the state government. So we're going to talk about that, and I hope that you will be as discombobulated is not the word. I hope that you will be as, and not confused, but say, this is not as simple as I thought it might be. It's not simple. So let's get into that. Madison talking about Patrick Henry's bill that would have basically raised money through taxes and paid and promoted Christianity as a government thing. He said the bill violates that equality which ought to be the basis of every law. It violates the establishment. what we put in the establishment clause, right?